Amara studied him for a moment. Why are you telling me this now? Because I just finished my retraining program and tomorrow I go back on duty. Chen leaned forward slightly. I wanted you to know that what happened to you changed things, not just policies, but people. It changed me. There was a sincerity in his voice that Amara hadn't expected. What will you do differently? She asked. Speak up sooner. Trust my instincts when something doesn't feel right. Remember that the badge means protecting everyone, not just other officers. He paused. And I've requested a transfer to community policing in neighborhoods that have historically had tense relationships with law enforcement. I want to be part of rebuilding that trust. Amara nodded slowly. It won't be easy, I know, but it's necessary. Chen stood to leave, then hesitated. There's something else you should know. After what happened with you, 5 other people came forward with similar stories about Reynolds. They hadn't filed formal complaints because they didn't think anyone would believe them or that anything would change. He looked at her with genuine respect. You gave them the courage to speak up. You made it impossible for the department to keep ignoring the problem. After Chen left, Amara found herself thinking about those 5 other people. People whose names she would never know, whose stories had been buried until now. Tomorrow, she would sit on a commission tasked with preventing others from experiencing what they had. The responsibility felt enormous. Her phone rang again, this time it was her mother. I just saw the news about that officer, her mother said. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom, just processing everything. I'm still not sure I like you being so public with all this. Those online threats are just words, Amara finished. And the commission work is too important to walk away from, her mother sighed. You always were stubborn. Like your father. It wasn't entirely a criticism. Will you at least come for dinner this weekend? The whole family wants to see you. I'll be there, Amara promised. That evening, as Amara walked into her apartment, she noticed a small package leaning against her door. Inside was a children's book about a young black girl who becomes a scientist, along with a handwritten note. Ms. Johnson, my daughter saw you on TV and said she wants to be brave like you when she grows up. I told her she already is. Thank you for showing her what standing up looks like. A grateful mother, Amara held the book gently, thinking about the little girl she'd never met who had seen something worth admiring in her most vulnerable moment. The next morning, Amara arrived early at City Hall for the commission's first meeting. The plaza outside was crowded with reporters and camera crews, all waiting for the official release of the Internal Affairs report on Officer Reynolds. As she made her way up the steps, she noticed a small group of protesters holding signs. Justice for Amara and Reform starts now. One woman stepped forward as Amara passed. Thank you for doing this, she said simply. My brother was harassed by that same officer last year. No one listened to him. Amara squeezed the woman's hand briefly. They're listening now. Inside, the commission members were gathering in a large conference room. Mayor Williams was there, along with Councilwoman Martinez, Police Chief Richardson, several community leaders, legal experts, and civil rights advocates. Amara took her seat, feeling the weight of expectation from all sides. Williams called the meeting to order. Before we begin, I want to thank everyone for being here, especially Ms. Johnson. He nodded toward Amara. What happened 3 weeks ago was a failure on multiple levels, not just the actions of one officer, but a system that allowed those actions to go unchecked for far too long. He distributed folders to each commission member. This is the new accountability framework we'll be implementing across all law enforcement in our city. It includes mandatory body cameras with automatic activation, civilian review of all use of force incidents, and a complete overhaul of how complaints are processed and investigated. Chief Richardson spoke next. We're also revising our training protocols, with emphasis on de-escalation techniques and recognizing and countering bias in policing. Officer Chen's experience has actually provided valuable insight into how partner dynamics can either enable or prevent incidents like this. Amara opened her folder and began reading through the framework. It was comprehensive, more so than she had expected. Real change would depend on implementation, of course, but this was a serious start. Ms. Johnson, Williams said, as someone who has experienced firsthand the failures in our system, your perspective will be invaluable. This commission isn't just about policy recommendations. It has the authority to review incidents, access body camera footage, and hold officers accountable directly. Amara looked around the table at the diverse group assembled. I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, but I'd like to make something clear from the beginning. This can't just be about addressing incidents after they happen. We need to prevent them. She pulled out her tablet and placed it on the table. I've been working on something. A data transparency initiative that would track officer interactions by neighborhood, race, and outcome. The patterns would be publicly accessible, making it impossible to ignore problematic behavior until it escalates to someone having a gun pointed at them in an airport. There was a moment of surprised silence. Then Chief Richardson leaned forward with interest. Like an early warning system? Exactly, Amara said. My company specializes in educational data analysis, but the same principles apply here. Transparency drives accountability. The discussion that followed was intense and productive. For the next 3 hours, the commission worked through the details of both the accountability framework and Amara's transparency initiative. By the end, a clear action plan had emerged. As they prepared to announce their recommendations to the waiting press, Amara felt, for the first time since the incident, a genuine sense of hope. What had happened to her couldn't be undone, but perhaps it could be transformed into something that would protect others. Outside, the crowd had grown larger. As Amara stepped up to the microphones beside Mayor Williams, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, Officer Chen, now back in uniform, standing respectfully at the edge of the gathering. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. 3 weeks ago, Amara began, her voice clear and strong, I experienced something that too many people in our community have faced, being treated as a threat because of the color of my skin. Today, we're taking concrete steps to ensure that such incidents become increasingly rare and eventually a thing of the past. As she outlined the commission's initial recommendations, Amara thought about that little girl who now saw her as brave, about the 5 people who had found their voices after she had used hers, about Officer Chen and his commitment to change. One moment of injustice had created ripples that continued to spread. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a beginning, and Amara Johnson was just getting started. Outside the interview room, Chief Richardson approached her again. Ms. Johnson, we've completed the preliminary review of the incident. Officer Reynolds has been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. His partner, Officer Chen, has given a statement that contradicts Reynolds' account of the alert they received. Meaning what exactly? Amara asked. Meaning that Reynolds may have exaggerated or misrepresented the nature of the security alert to justify his actions, Richardson explained. If that's confirmed, he'll face more than just administrative leave. Amara nodded, processing this information. And the body camera footage? Being reviewed now, Richardson confirmed. It will be preserved as evidence along with all the cell phone videos from witnesses. Mayor Williams joined them. Ms. Johnson, I've arranged for a car to take you to your hotel. Unless you'd prefer to reschedule your business meeting. No one would blame you. Amara considered this for a moment, then shook her head. No. I came here to present my company's educational software to potential investors, and that's what I'm going to do. She checked her watch. I have enough time to change and review my notes. Williams looked impressed. Are you sure? It's been an incredibly difficult day, which is exactly why I need to keep going. Amara replied. If I let this derail my work, then Officer Reynolds has taken something else from me. I won't allow that. As they walked toward the exit, Amara's phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert. She opened it to find her own face looking back at her. Alongside a headline, Airport incident sparks citywide protests. Hundreds gather outside police headquarters. She showed the screen to Williams and Martinez. It's bigger than just me now, she said quietly. Williams nodded solemnly. It always was. Your experience today was just the match that lit a fire that's been building for a long time. Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. As Amara prepared to leave, Martinez handed her a business card. Call me anytime, day or night. What started today, this commission, this push for accountability, it won't fade away. I'll make sure of it. Amara took the card, suddenly overwhelmed by the weight of everything that had happened. Thank you for stepping in when you did, for seeing what was happening and not looking away. Thank you for your courage, Martinez replied. Now go give that presentation. Show them that no one, not even a man with a badge and a gun, can stop you from doing what you came here to do. As the car pulled away from the curb, Amara looked back at the airport where her life had changed so dramatically. The day wasn't over. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at the airport. Amara sat in her office looking out at the city skyline as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings. On her computer screen was an email from Mayor Williams's office, confirming the first official meeting of the newly formed Commission on Policing and Racial Equity. It was scheduled for tomorrow morning. She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. Her company's presentation to investors had gone well that day, despite everything. In fact, one investor had specifically mentioned admiring her composure and strength after what she'd been through. The funding had come through a week later, but the personal cost had been significant. The first few days after the incident had been a whirlwind of media interviews, meetings with city officials, and countless messages of support and, inevitably, hate. She'd had to hire a temporary assistant just to manage the flood of emails and calls. Her phone buzzed with a text from Councilwoman Martinez. "Just got the final report. Call me when you can." Amara picked up her phone and dialed. Martinez answered immediately. "Amara, thanks for calling back so quickly. I wanted you to hear this from me first before it hits the news." "I'm listening," Amara said, bracing herself. "The internal affairs investigation has concluded. They've recommended termination for Officer Reynolds. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just from your incident, but once they started digging, they found a pattern of similar behavior going back years." Amara closed her eyes briefly, letting the news sink in. "And Officer Chen?" 2-week suspension and mandatory retraining. The report acknowledged that he tried to de-escalate and expressed doubts about Reynolds' actions, but failed to intervene effectively. "What about the alert they claim to have received?" Martinez's voice hardened. "That's the most disturbing part. The investigation found that Reynolds essentially created a security threat where none existed. He saw you, made assumptions, and then justified his actions after the fact. Chen went along with it initially, but later admitted the truth." Amara wasn't surprised, but the confirmation still hit hard. "So if I'd made one wrong move—" "But you didn't," Martinez said firmly. "And now a dangerous officer is being removed from duty before he could hurt someone else." She paused. "The full report will be made public tomorrow morning, just before our commission meeting. The mayor wanted to make sure you had time to process it first." After ending the call, Amara sat quietly for a moment. There was no satisfaction in knowing Reynolds was losing his job, just a sad relief that he wouldn't be in a position to threaten anyone else. Her assistant knocked lightly on the door. "Ms. Johnson, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." Amara was about to say she was done for the day when her assistant added, "It's Officer Chen." Surprise made her hesitate, but curiosity won out. "Send him in." Officer Chen entered her office cautiously, dressed in civilian clothes, jeans and a simple button-up shirt. He looked younger without his uniform and distinctly uncomfortable. "Ms. Johnson," he said, "thank you for seeing me." "I wasn't sure you would." Amara gestured to a chair across from her desk. "What can I do for you, Officer Chen?" He sat down, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I wanted to apologize in person, not as part of any official statement or because my superiors told me to, but because it's the right thing to do." He met her eyes directly. "I failed that day. I knew what Reynolds was doing wasn't right, but I didn't stop him quickly enough. I was trained to have my partners back, but I forgot that my first duty is to protect the public." She stepped back and Williams returned to the microphone. "Ms. Johnson is right. Apologies are not enough. That's why, effective immediately, I am placing Officer James Reynolds on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I'm also ordering a comprehensive review of all security protocols at this airport and all city facilities." He looked out at the sea of reporters, but more importantly, "I am announcing today the formation of a special commission on policing and racial equity. This commission will have real power to review cases, recommend policy changes, and hold officers accountable." He turned to Amara. "And I am asking Ms. Johnson to serve as a civilian advisor to this commission." The announcement sent another ripple of excitement through the press corps, and the questions began flying again. "Mayor Williams, is this the first incident of its kind at the airport?" Ms. Johnson, will you be filing a lawsuit against the city? Councilwoman Martinez, did you witness the entire confrontation? Williams raised his hands again. We'll take questions in a moment. But first, there's something else that needs to be said. He turned to face Amara directly, speaking not just to her but to every citizen watching. Ms. Johnson, on behalf of the city, I apologize for what happened to you today. It was wrong. It was unjust. And I promise you, it will not be forgotten and it will not be without consequence. For the first time since the ordeal began, Amara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Not completely, that would take much longer, but enough to breathe a little easier. The real work, she knew, was just beginning. The press conference ended in a flurry of camera flashes and shouted questions. As Mayor Williams guided Amara away from the podium, his security team created a path through the throng of reporters. Camera crews jostled for position, each hoping to catch a few more seconds of footage of the woman whose face was already dominating local news and social media. This way, Williams said quietly, leading Amara toward a side door. There's a private room where you can take a moment to breathe. Amara nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation and press conference was beginning to fade, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. As they entered a small conference room adjacent to the main press area, Amara sank into the nearest chair. Would you like some water? Or coffee? Williams asked, his usual political smoothness giving way to genuine concern. Water, please, Amara replied. Her throat felt raw. Whether from stress or from speaking at the press conference, she wasn't sure. Councilwoman Martinez entered the room behind them, her phone still in hand. It's everywhere, she said, turning the screen toward them. All the local stations cut to the press conference live. Social media is blowing up with the video of what happened. She looked at Amara. You're trending nationally. Amara closed her eyes briefly. Not exactly how I planned to make headlines with my company. You spoke powerfully, Martinez said, sitting down beside her. People are listening. David, the mayor's press secretary, hurried into the room, his face flushed with a mixture of stress and excitement. Mr. Mayor, we're being inundated with interview requests. CNN, MSNBC, all the networks, they want both you and Ms. Johnson. Williams looked to Amara. That's entirely your decision. You don't owe anyone any more of your time or energy today. Amara took a sip of water, considering. Part of her wanted nothing more than to go to her hotel room, lock the door, and process everything that had happened. But another part, the part that had built a company from the ground up, the part that had never backed down from a challenge, knew that this moment mattered too much to step back. I'll do one interview today, she said finally. The one that will reach the most people. But not alone. I want you there too, Mr. Mayor. I want people to see that this isn't just about me telling my story. It's about those in power committing to real change. Williams nodded. Absolutely. David set it up. As David left to arrange the interview, Amara's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out to find dozens of missed calls and messages. Most were from colleagues and friends who had seen the news, but one message caught her eye. From her mother. Just saw what happened. Are you okay? Call me as soon as you can. Amara felt a sudden tightness in her throat. Her mother had warned her about this her entire life. Be careful. Keep your hands visible. Don't argue. Stay alive. The rules for survival that Black parents taught their children, passed down like bitter heirlooms. I need to call my family, she said, standing up. They've seen the news. Of course, Williams said. Use this room. We'll be just outside when you're ready. As the mayor and councilwoman stepped out, Amara dialed her mother's number. It barely rang once before being answered. Amara? Baby, are you all right? Her mother's voice was tense with worry. I'm okay, Mom, Amara said, trying to sound stronger than she felt. It was bad, but I'm okay. I saw it on the news. That officer had his gun out. Do you know how easily? Her mother's voice broke. I know, Mom, believe me, I know. Amara took a deep breath. But the mayor was there. He stepped in. We just did a press conference and there's going to be an investigation. An investigation, her mother repeated, skepticism heavy in her voice. She'd lived long enough to know how these investigations often ended. And the officer? What's happening to him? Administrative leave for now. But the mayor promised me this wouldn't be swept under the rug. He's forming a commission on policing and racial equity, and he asked me to be an advisor. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Do you believe him? That anything will really change? It was the question Amara had been asking herself since the press conference. I don't know, she answered honestly. But I have to try. If I don't use this platform this moment, then what was it all for? After promising to call again that evening, Amara ended the call and took a moment to gather herself. She checked her reflection in her phone's camera, straightened her blazer once more, and stepped out to rejoin the mayor. Outside the room, she found Williams in conversation with a tall black man in a police uniform, adorned with the insignia of a chief. Both men turned as she approached. Ms. Johnson, Williams said, this is Police Chief Anthony Richardson. He came as soon as he heard what happened. Chief Richardson extended his hand. Ms. Johnson, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced today. It was inexcusable. Amara shook his hand, studying his face. Thank you, Chief, but I'm more interested in what happens next than in apologies. Richardson nodded. As am I. I've already begun reviewing Officer Reynolds' record. What I've found is troubling. There's a pattern that should have been addressed long ago. Why wasn't it? Amara asked directly. The chief didn't flinch from the question. Internal investigations that went nowhere. Complaints that were dismissed. A system designed to protect its own. He shook his head. I've only been chief for 6 months. I inherited this problem, but that's no excuse. It stops now. Before Amara could respond, David returned, looking slightly harried. We're set for CNN in 20 minutes. They're setting up in a conference room upstairs. As they made their way through the airport, Amara was struck by the changed atmosphere. People recognized her. Travelers paused mid-step. Airport employees whispered to each other as she passed. Some nodded in solidarity or gave encouraging smiles. Others simply stared, witnesses to a moment that had transcended a personal humiliation to become something larger. The CNN interview was brief but powerful. Seated beside Mayor Williams, with the airport visible through windows behind them, Amara recounted her experience calmly but unflinchingly. The reporter, a veteran journalist named Diane Powell, asked direct questions without sensationalism. Ms. Johnson, Powell said toward the end of the interview, you mentioned in your press conference that you don't want apologies, you want change. What kind of change are you hoping to see come from this incident? Amara looked directly into the camera. I want a world where people who look like me can travel, shop, drive, or simply exist without being seen as suspicious. I want officers like Reynolds to be held accountable not just after incidents like mine go viral, but before they escalate to the point where someone gets hurt or killed. She turned slightly to include Williams in her gaze. And I want leaders like Mayor Williams to know that we're watching. That promises made in front of cameras need to translate to real action. Williams didn't shy away from her challenge. Ms. Johnson is absolutely right. My administration will be judged not by what we say today, but by what we do tomorrow, and in the weeks and months to come. As the interview concluded, Amara felt a strange mix of exhaustion and energy. The day had begun so ordinarily, just another business trip, another presentation to prepare for. Now, less than 8 hours later, she had become the face of an issue that had plagued her community for generations. Conceal woman, it was necessity. If I hadn't been able to cite a meeting with the mayor, if I hadn't been a CEO with connections, if you hadn't been here to witness what was happening. She let the sentence hang unfinished. Elena nodded, understanding completely. The system shouldn't work that way. The right to safety shouldn't depend on status or connections. No, Amara agreed as they followed the mayor toward the VIP lounge. It shouldn't, but today it did. And now we have to decide what happens next. Behind them, the video of Amara being held at gunpoint was already being uploaded to social media platforms, spreading across the city and beyond like wildfire. By the time the mayor's delayed press conference began, it would have thousands of views and shares, setting the stage for what was to come. Mayor Robert Williams had been in politics for over 20 years, and he'd learned that timing was everything. His flight had landed just minutes before the incident began unfolding in the baggage claim area. He'd been walking through the terminal, mentally rehearsing his speech about the new infrastructure project, when his security detail received the urgent call from Councilwoman Martinez. Now, as he walked beside Amara Johnson toward the airport's VIP lounge, He was keenly aware that his response to this situation could define his administration. The eyes of the public, and more importantly, those of justice, were watching. "Ms. Johnson," he said quietly as they walked, "I want you to know that what happened to you today is not what our city stands for." Amara glanced at him, her expression composed but with eyes that still burned with a mixture of anger and lingering fear. "With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, it seems to be exactly what your city stands for, at least to Officer Reynolds." The mayor nodded, accepting the rebuke. "You're right to be angry. I'm not here to defend what happened or to ask you to accept empty words. I'm here because we need to address this head-on, publicly and honestly." They reached the VIP lounge, a spacious room typically reserved for first-class passengers and airport executives. Williams's staff had already arrived, looking concerned and slightly confused by the sudden change in schedule. David, the mayor's press secretary, approached immediately. "Sir, the press is gathering. They've already got footage of the incident, and it's spreading on social media. We need to craft our response carefully." Williams shook his head. "No crafting, David, no spin. What happened down there was wrong, and we're going to acknowledge that directly." He turned to Amara. "Ms. Johnson, I'd like you to join me at the press conference if you're comfortable with that. People need to hear your voice, not just mine." Amara considered this for a moment, then nodded. "I'll speak. Not just for myself, but for everyone who's ever been in my position without a mayor or councilwoman to step in." Councilwoman Martinez, who had been on her phone sending rapid-fire texts, looked up. "The video is already trending locally. Over 20,000 views in the last 10 minutes. She showed her screen to the mayor, who grimaced at the sight of Officer Reynolds pointing his weapon at Amara. "We need to get ahead of this," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Then to his staff, "I want Officer Reynolds' disciplinary record pulled immediately, and I want to know exactly what this alert was that they claim to have received." A young aide hurried off to make calls, while David began rearranging the schedule for the press conference. The original topic, a new infrastructure project for the city's west side, would have to wait. Amara sat down in one of the plush chairs, suddenly feeling the full weight of what had happened. Her hands, which had remained steady throughout the ordeal, now trembled slightly as she reached for a glass of water that an attendant had brought. Councilwoman Martinez noticed and sat beside her. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. Amara took a deep breath. "I keep thinking about what could have happened. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture. People who look like me have died for less." Martinez nodded solemnly. "I know, and that's why what happens next is so important." Across the room, the mayor was speaking intently with his chief of staff, occasionally glancing toward Amara. After a few minutes, he approached her again. "Ms. Johnson, we've just received some preliminary information. The alert that Officers Reynolds and Chen were supposedly responding to was indeed issued, but it contained almost no specific details beyond a vague physical description that could have matched hundreds of women in the airport today. More troublingly, this isn't the first time Officer Reynolds has been involved in incidents like this." Amara wasn't surprised. "Let me guess. He has a history of stopping people who look like me. Several complaints of racial profiling over the last 5 years, Williams confirmed, all dismissed or ruled unfounded after internal investigations." The disgust in his voice was evident, and yet he still has a badge and a gun, Amara noted. "For now," Williams replied. "That's going to change, I promise you." David approached again, checking his watch. "Sir, we're set to begin in 5 minutes. The press room is packed, all the local stations plus some national outlets. Word is spreading fast." Williams nodded, then turned back to Amara. "I meant what I said earlier. I want you to speak to tell people what happened in your own words, but I completely understand if you'd prefer not to." Amara stood, straightening her blazer once more. "I'll speak, but I have one condition." "Name it," Williams said. "This can't just be about today. It can't just be about me. There needs to be real change in how your police and security forces operate." Her voice was firm, her gaze direct. "I'm not interested in being part of a PR exercise." Williams held her gaze. "Ms. Johnson, I was elected on a platform of police reform. Progress has been slower than I'd hoped, but what happened today?" He shook his head. "This is the catalyst we needed. I want you to hold me accountable. The entire city should." For the first time since the ordeal began, Amara felt something close to hope. Not trust, that would take much longer to earn, but a cautious hope that something meaningful might come from this terrible experience. Martinez stood as well. It's time. The press is waiting. As they walked toward the conference room, Williams's security detail formed a protective circle around them. Amara noted the irony. The same type of uniform that had threatened her life less than an hour ago was now there to protect her. The conference room was indeed packed, with journalists and cameramen crammed into every available space. The moment the mayor entered with Amara beside him, a barrage of camera flashes erupted, and the room filled with the clamor of shouted questions. Williams raised his hands for silence, and gradually the room quieted. He stepped up to the podium with Amara standing slightly behind him to his right, and Councilwoman Martinez to his left. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "As many of you know, I was scheduled to speak today about our new infrastructure project. However, something occurred at this airport less than an hour ago that demands our immediate attention." He turned and gestured for Amara to join him at the microphone. "This is Amara Johnson, CEO of Edutech Solutions. Ms. Johnson was detained at gunpoint by airport security officers today while simply retrieving her luggage. She was forced to lie face down on the floor, searched, and publicly humiliated despite having done absolutely nothing wrong." A murmur swept through the press corps, and more camera flashes popped. "I want to be absolutely clear," Williams continued, his voice firm. "What happened today was not a misunderstanding. It was not a necessary security precaution. It was racial profiling, plain and simple. And it is unacceptable in our city." Amara stepped forward to the microphone, her composure remarkable given the circumstances. The room fell silent as she began to speak. "An hour ago, I was lying face down on the floor of this airport with a gun pointed at my back. My crime? Being a black woman retrieving her suitcase." Her voice was steady, but the emotion behind her words was unmistakable. "I am a business executive. I run a successful company. I have spoken at the White House about educational technology. None of that mattered to Officer Reynolds when he saw the color of my skin." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "I am standing here now because I was lucky. Mayor Williams happened to be arriving at the same time. Councilwoman Martinez happened to witness what was occurring. But what about all the other black men and women who don't have a mayor to step in? What about those who don't have their humiliation captured on a dozen cell phones? What happens to them?" The room was completely silent now, every journalist hanging on her words. "I don't want apologies," Amara continued. "I want change. I want accountability. I want every officer like Reynolds to understand that they can't treat people this way simply because of how they look." "No, I think that's a fair question," came a new voice from the edge of the crowd, firm, authoritative, and instantly recognizable to many in the terminal. The crowd parted as Mayor Robert Williams made his way forward, flanked by his security detail. He surveyed the scene with a grim expression, taking in Amara on the floor, the officers with weapons drawn, and the crowd of shocked onlookers with their recording phones. 5 minutes after it had begun, the confrontation was about to take an unexpected turn. Councilwoman Elena Martinez had been having a perfectly ordinary day until about 15 minutes ago. She'd arrived at the airport early for the press conference, wanting to review her notes on the new infrastructure project before Mayor Williams arrived. The baggage claim area hadn't been her first choice for waiting. It was noisy and crowded, but the small coffee shop there made an excellent latte, and she'd found a relatively quiet corner to sit and prepare. That's when she'd heard the shouting. Elena had been in politics long enough to recognize trouble when she saw it. The moment she spotted the officer with his weapon drawn, pointing at a well-dressed black woman, something in her gut told her this wasn't right. 15 years on the city council had taught her to trust that feeling. Now, standing between an increasingly agitated Officer Reynolds and a growing crowd of angry onlookers, Elena realized she was the only official present who might prevent this situation from spiraling further out of control. "Officer Reynolds," she said, reading his name tag and keeping her voice steady, "I understand you're following what you believe is protocol, but I'm not seeing cause for weapons to be drawn on a compliant citizen." Reynolds barely acknowledged her, his attention fixed on Amara, who remained face down on the terminal floor. "This is a security matter, Councilwoman. With all due respect, you don't have jurisdiction here." "Perhaps not," Elena conceded, "but I do have the authority to question potential civil rights violations occurring in our city." And I've already contacted the mayor's office. This last part wasn't entirely true. She'd called the mayor's security detail, not his office, but it had the desired effect of making Officer Chen look increasingly uncomfortable. From her position on the floor, Amara could hear the conversation but couldn't see the councilwoman clearly. What she could see were the dozens of shoes surrounding her in a loose circle, and the forest of phones pointed in her direction, recording every moment of her humiliation. Despite the cold floor against her cheek, heat crept up her neck and into her face, a burning mixture of anger, embarrassment, and fear. "My name is Amara Johnson," she called out, loud enough for the videos to pick up. "I'm being detained without cause. I've offered my identification. I've complied with all instructions. I am unarmed." Her words seemed to stir something in the crowd. More voices joined in. "Let her up." "This is wrong." "She's cooperating." "Put the guns away." Officer Chen had finished searching Amara's purse and had moved on to her suitcase, finding nothing but clothes, a laptop, toiletries, and business materials. He looked up at his partner with clear doubt written across his face. "Reynolds," he said quietly, "there's nothing here. Just business documents and personal items." Reynolds' jaw tightened, but he didn't lower his weapon. "The information we received, what information exactly?" Elena pressed, stepping closer despite the warning look from Reynolds. "What specific description are you working from?" "Ma'am, I need you to step back," Reynolds said, his voice tense. But Elena had spotted something he hadn't. The airport security supervisor finally pushing through the crowd, followed by two more officers. And behind them, the unmistakable figure of Mayor Williams and his security team, moving with purpose toward the scene. Elena turned to address the gathering crowd, her political instincts kicking in. "Everyone, please remain calm. The mayor has arrived and this situation will be resolved shortly." She didn't know if that was true, but saying it might make it so. The security supervisor, a stocky man with salt and pepper hair named Howard Gaines, took in the scene with visible dismay. "Reynolds, what the hell is going on here?" Before Reynolds could answer, Chen spoke up. "We received a tip about a suspect matching this woman's general description, sir. We've searched her belongings and found nothing suspicious. Her ID confirms she's Amara Johnson, CEO of EduTech Solutions." Gaines looked from Chen to Reynolds, then to Amara still on the ground, and finally to the crowd of witnesses with their recording phones. "Holster your weapon, Reynolds, now." Reynolds hesitated, his finger still near the trigger. "Sir, protocol states—" "I said holster your weapon," Gaines repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. "That's an order." The crowd seemed to collectively hold its breath as Reynolds slowly, reluctantly, lowered his gun and returned it to his holster. The tension in the air eased just slightly, but Amara remained on the floor, unwilling to move without explicit permission. "May I get up now?" she asked, her voice remarkably composed despite everything. Gaines nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Please slowly." As Amara carefully pushed herself up from the floor, Elena moved to her side, offering a hand for support. "Ms. Johnson, I'm Councilwoman Elena Martinez. Are you all right?" Amara accepted the help, rising to her feet with as much dignity as possible. She straightened her blazer, now wrinkled and dusty from the floor, and looked Elena in the eye. "No, Councilwoman, I am not all right. I've just been held at gunpoint in a public space for doing nothing more than retrieving my luggage." Elena nodded, understanding completely. What happened here today was unacceptable, and I promise you it won't be ignored. The crowd around them had grown even larger, with airport employees, travelers, and now members of the press who had been waiting for the mayor's conference gathering to witness the aftermath. Camera flashes popped from several directions, and Elena could hear reporters already narrating the scene into their microphones. Mayor Williams made his way through the last of the crowd, his expression grave as he took in what was happening. Unlike many politicians who might have hesitated to involve themselves in such a volatile situation, Williams moved directly toward Amara and Elena. "Ms. Johnson," he said, recognition immediate in his eyes. "We met last month at City Hall. Your educational software presentation." Amara nodded, surprised that he remembered her. "Yes, Mr. Mayor." Williams turned to the security supervisor. "I want a full explanation of what happened here, but not in the middle of the terminal. Is there somewhere private we can go?" Gaines nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. We can use the security office, so good. Williams said, then addressed Amara directly. Ms. Johnson, if you're willing, I'd like you to join us. Councilwoman Martinez as well. Amara straightened her shoulders, finding her voice again. With respect, Mr. Mayor, I'd prefer not to go anywhere private with the officers who just held me at gunpoint. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and several nearby passengers nodded in support. Williams considered this, then nodded. A fair point. Officer Reynolds, Officer Chen, you'll report to Supervisor Gaines. The rest of us will use the airport's VIP lounge. He turned to his press secretary, who had followed him through the crowd. David, inform the press that our scheduled conference will be delayed by 30 minutes. Reynolds, who had remained silent since holstering his weapon, finally spoke up. Sir, we were acting on intelligence received through official channels. This woman matched the description of, That's enough, officer. Gaines cut in sharply. You can provide a full report to me, not in front of cameras. But the damage was already done. Several reporters had moved closer. Microphones extended to catch the exchange. Elena noticed at least 3 different news station logos on the jackets of nearby cameramen. This story was about to go citywide, if not national. As Williams began to lead Amara away from the scene, she paused, turning back to look directly at Reynolds. I'd like to know exactly what description I matched, she said, her voice steady but with an unmistakable edge. Because I suspect it was simply black woman at an airport. Reynolds's face flushed red, but before he could respond, Chen spoke up, looking uncomfortable but determined. The alert described a female suspect, approximately 30-40 years old, dark complexion, business attire, traveling alone with blue luggage. He glanced apologetically at Amara. It was vague, ma'am. Too vague. A wave of angry muttering swept through the crowd. Elena exchanged a look with the mayor, both of them recognizing the potential for this situation to ignite long-simmering tensions in the city. Ms. Johnson, Williams said quietly, I'd like to personally apologize for what happened to you today. It was unacceptable, and I promise you there will be accountability. He glanced at the gathering press. In fact, if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to make that apology publicly at the press conference I was scheduled to give. Amara considered this for a moment, then nodded. I'll be there, Mr. Mayor. I think people need to see what happened here today. As they moved away from the baggage claim area, Elena fell into step beside Amara. That was brave, she said quietly. Standing your ground like that. Amara's eyes were still bright with barely controlled anger. It wasn't bravery, Cooey. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Westside International Airport, casting long shadows across the busy baggage claim area. Amara Johnson stood waiting for her suitcase, exhausted after a 5-hour flight from New York. As a successful business executive, she'd grown accustomed to these business trips, but that didn't make them any less tiring. She checked her watch and sighed. The meeting with potential investors was in 3 hours, just enough time to reach her hotel, freshen up, and review her presentation one last time. The carousel lurched into motion, and Amara adjusted her blazer, smoothing down the wrinkles that had formed during the flight. At 34, she had built her tech company from the ground up, specializing in educational software that was now being implemented in schools across the country. Just last month, she'd presented her latest program at a city economic development meeting, catching the attention of several officials, including Mayor Robert Williams himself. As luggage began to appear on the carousel, Amara spotted her distinctive blue suitcase. She reached for it, relieved to finally be on the last leg of her journey. That's when she noticed him, a uniformed airport security officer watching her intently from across the terminal. Something about his gaze made her uncomfortable, but she dismissed the feeling, focusing instead on checking that her luggage tag was intact. Officer James Reynolds spoke quietly into his radio, his eyes never leaving Amara. Possible match for suspect description at baggage claim 3. African-American female, dark business suit, blue luggage. He'd been with airport security for 15 years and had developed what he called a sixth sense for trouble. What his colleagues called racial profiling, he called good instincts. His partner, Officer Chen, approached from the other side of the terminal. You sure about this, Reynolds? The description was pretty vague. Better safe than sorry, Reynolds replied, his hand already moving to his holster. Remember the protocol for high-risk situations. Chen looked uncertain but followed Reynolds' lead as they began making their way toward Amara, who was now pulling her suitcase off the carousel, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. The first indication that something was wrong came when Amara heard a man's voice bark, "Airport security!" "Don't move!" She turned, confused, thinking there must be some situation nearby that required attention. It took her a moment to realize that the officers were looking directly at her, and by then Reynolds had already drawn his weapon. "Put your hands where I can see them," Reynolds shouted, his gun pointed at Amara's chest. The sudden command froze her in place, her mind struggling to make sense of what was happening. "What? I don't," she began, but Reynolds cut her off. "On the ground, now!" His voice echoed through the terminal, causing nearby travelers to scatter in confusion and fear. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly raised her hands. "There must be some mistake," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My name is Amara Johnson. I'm here for a business meeting," I said on the ground. Reynolds took a step closer, his weapon still aimed directly at her. Face down, arms spread. People around them were pulling out phones, recording the confrontation. A mother hurried past with her children, shielding their eyes. An elderly man stood watching in horror, his own luggage forgotten beside him. Officer Chen flanked to the side, his hand on his weapon but not yet drawn. "Ma'am, please comply for your safety," he said, his tone less aggressive but equally firm. Amara slowly knelt to the ground, then lay face down on the cold tile floor of the terminal, her cheek pressed against the surface that thousands of shoes had walked across that day. The indignity of the position burned through her initial shock, igniting a slow, simmering anger. "I have identification in my purse," she said clearly, keeping her hands visible. "I'm a business executive. I was just at a conference in New York." Reynolds ignored her explanation, moving closer with his weapon still trained on her. "Remain still while we conduct our search," he ordered, nodding to Chen to approach her bag. By now a small crowd had gathered at a safe distance, many with phones raised, capturing everything. Whispers rippled through the onlookers. What did she do? Nothing from the looks of it. This doesn't feel right. A middle-aged white man in a business suit stepped forward slightly. "Officers, I was on the same flight as this woman. She was in first class working on her laptop the entire time. Whatever you think she did." "Sir, step back and mind your own business," Reynolds snapped without taking his eyes off Amara. "This is a security matter." On the floor, Amara took slow, deliberate breaths, fighting against the panic threatening to overwhelm her. This had happened to friends of hers before, cases of mistaken identity, racial profiling, but never to her. Not like this, with guns drawn in a public place, with dozens of strangers watching her humiliation. "My ID is in the front pocket of my purse," she repeated, her voice stronger now despite her vulnerable position. "My name is Amara Johnson. I'm the CEO of EduTech Solutions. You can verify my identity." Officer Chen carefully approached her purse, which had fallen nearby when she'd been ordered to the ground. He opened it cautiously and retrieved her wallet. "James," he said quietly, examining her driver's license and business cards. "ID matches the name she gave. Amara Johnson, CEO of EduTech Solutions." Reynolds didn't lower his weapon. "That doesn't mean she's not our suspect. Keep searching the bag." By now the scene had drawn even more attention. Airport staff hovered uncertainly at the edges, unsure how to intervene. A security supervisor had been called but hadn't yet arrived, and unknown to both Amara and the officers. Among the bystanders was City Councilwoman Elena Martinez, who had been waiting to meet Mayor Williams for a scheduled press conference at the airport. The councilwoman watched the situation unfold with growing alarm, her phone already to her ear. "Tom, it's Elena. Is the mayor's plane landed yet? We have a situation at baggage claim 3. An African-American woman is being held at gunpoint by airport security, and it looks completely unjustified. I think we need him here now." On the ground, Amara's thoughts raced. She needed to stay calm, stay alive. This was how these situations turned tragic, with misunderstandings, with fear, with split-second decisions made by officers with weapons drawn. She kept her movements minimal, her hands clearly visible, her voice steady despite the rage and fear coursing through her. "Officer," she said to Chen, who seemed less aggressive than his partner, "there's a business card in my wallet from the mayor's office. I presented at City Hall just last month. Please call that number if you need to verify who I am." Chen glanced at Reynolds, uncertainty written across his face. He'd found nothing suspicious in Amara's purse, Just the usual items a business traveler might carry. A laptop, a phone, a charger, business cards, a small makeup bag, and a half-eaten protein bar. Reynolds, I'm not finding anything here, he said quietly, and her credentials check out. Maybe we should keep looking, Reynolds insisted, his gun still trained on Amara. The description said the suspect might be carrying contraband in their luggage. Amara felt a cold wave of understanding wash over her. This wasn't about any real suspicion. This was happening because of how she looked, because she was a black woman traveling alone. The realization settled in her stomach like a stone. More people had gathered now, the circle of onlookers growing as word spread through the terminal. Someone in the crowd shouted, "This is wrong! She hasn't done anything." Another voice called out, "Put the guns away! She's complying." Reynolds' face hardened as he glanced at the crowd. "This is a security matter. Everyone stay back." But the murmurs only grew louder. More phones appeared, recording the confrontation from every angle. Councilwoman Martinez pushed her way forward, her city ID badge held high. "I'm City Councilwoman Elena Martinez," she announced clearly. "Officers, I need you to explain what's happening here." Reynolds barely spared her a glance. "Ma'am, please step back. This is airport security jurisdiction. And I'm a city official questioning what appears to be a clear case of racial profiling." Martinez replied firmly, "I've already contacted the mayor's office. Either explain the reasonable suspicion behind this detention or end it now." The mention of the mayor seemed to give Chen pause, but Reynolds remained unmoved. "We received intelligence about a suspect matching this woman's description. We're following protocol." From her position on the floor, Amara spoke up again. "What exactly is this description? A black woman with a suitcase in an airport? Do you know how many people that could be?" Reynolds tightened his grip on his weapon. "Ma'am, I need you to remain silent.